Now, I know there was a sighting in North Granby about the mid 60s. It was a lady with a couple, I guess it was two nieces, that had seen something that originated around Sodom Mountain to Granville.
Yeah, they're on their way from a farm in North Granby, and following that route that led from North Granby into Granville, where the aunt had her best friend, and what they had seen, they wanted to get corroboration, and at the same time they wanted her friend to witness this thing that they had seen out in this open field just before entering the town of North Granville. And it was an unusual sighting, to say the least. It was not a close encounters sighting where they actually made contacts with the pilots or operators of the vehicle, but it was close enough where it made the circumstances different in that it was that close. People normally didn't see a UFO that close enough to be able to pick out details, of which this particular sighting, there were many, many details. For instance, as they were driving toward Granville, and it was around between 5:30 and 5:45 on a winter evening, and the sun was beginning to set, and this disc-shaped object appeared out of nowhere on the horizon and stopped alongside the highway. I'd say at least 100 feet away, and the object was sort of a pearlescent color, not necessarily bright and silvery, but enough to reflect a certain amount of light. And the object itself was, they estimated, 50 feet in diameter, with a transparent dome on the top. And along its rim or perimeter were a series of lights. And when they first saw it, they were sort of a creamy white color. And they couldn't remember how many lights, except to say that there were many of them. And some of them seemed to rotate in sequence. And it was enough of an unusual sighting where they pulled the car over to the side of the road, got out of the car, and were watching it. And the first thing that struck them was the lack of sound. There's no buzzing, no engine noise whatsoever, and sort of kind of a very soft humming sound. And they couldn't understand what kept it up in the air, because for something, a machine that large would have had a loud blasting noise. And as they were watching it, another car coming from the same direction as they had been coming from North Granby into Granville passed on the road, and they noticed that there were kids in the back, and they think it was a station wagon. And the kids in the back seat were all excited and jumping around, pointing to the object. And the parents, mother and father, they assumed it was mother and father, kept looking straight ahead. They weren't paying attention at all, which seemed to excite the kids even more. And they kept pointing and yelling, and obviously for the driver of the car to stop so they could get out, as the original couple did, and look at it. But it didn't happen. They just cruised on by. In the meantime, the object didn't move. It wasn't frightened away by the appearance of a second or even a third car going in the opposite direction from Granville to Granby. And they watched it for perhaps, from the best estimate that they could give, at least another 5 or 6 minutes. And where they sensed a movement of the lights along the perimeter blinking off and on for a very short period of time. And then suddenly, without warning, it took off. And when it took off in the area of Sodom Mountain, which is a range of hills in back of the field. They sat stunned for a moment, and then the aunt who was driving the car decided to go into Granville and hunt down her friend and gather her to substantiate what they had seen. And so they went to the woman's house. She was home. They all got together in the car, and they headed toward the center of Granville. And since the object took off in the direction of Sodom Mountain, they drove through the town of Granville. And the first road that led to the right, which in turn led to the beginnings of Granville, Sodom Mountain. They followed that road. It was quite dark by then. And they hadn't gone more than a mile, 2 miles. And as they drove, the geography of the terrain changed and the land began sloping downward. And after about 2 miles, they saw this dark thing, which is even darker than the background of trees, and it was just hanging there as if it were hiding. But this time, there were red lights along the perimeter, and the dome light was a clear, creamy white color. And they didn't see any movement or activity within the dome, but they were attracted by the motions of the perimeter lights, which kept changing and fluctuating and always stayed red. And again, after a few minutes, the thing took off. And when it took off, again it headed toward Granby, which would have been south, and in the southwest, I believe it would have been southwest direction, and without a sound, no growling engine noise, no acceleration noise at all, just took off.